No kid's Jewish education should end at 13. Adraba offers Ontario high school credits infused with Jewish learning online for teens across the province. Ministry approved, intellectually demanding, Jewishly transformative. Adraba.ca. That's ADRABA.ca. Your teen belongs here.
Earlier this week, millions of people watched one of our own stand behind a podium on Jeopardy and win. And it was broadcast on national TV. Today on the CJN's North Star podcast, we're talking to the CJN's own James Hirsh. He's the co-host of the Menschwarmers podcast about what it was like under the lights, how he prepared, and what was going through his mind during Final Jeopardy and the Daily Double.
Semiconductors used in AI pour out of a science park in Hsinchu on this island. James.
What is Taiwan?
That is the island.
World Cities for 1200.
Answer. You skipped it, but you went back for it. A daily double for you, James.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Friday, February 27th, 2026. Welcome to North Star, the flagship podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, made possible by the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. By day, James Hirsh is a busy Toronto lawyer. He's also known as one half of the popular CJN sports podcast, Menschwarmers, about Jews in sports. They've spent the past couple of weeks, of course, covering the Olympics, about Jews competing for various international teams. Now James takes his place in history as the first person that I know of from the CJN to go on Jeopardy, although there have been other Jewish Canadians on that show in recent years, and we've covered them. But James Hirsh got to compete with one of Jeopardy's winningest contestants ever in the host spot, Ken Jennings. So James joins me now from Toronto to give us all the behind-the-scenes scoop. Welcome, Jamie. It's good to see you. Congratulations.
Thanks so much, Ellen. Nice to be on this side of the podcast interview, being asked questions as opposed to having to come up with questions is so much more difficult.
Yeah, well, you've never been subjected to the Besner method, but in terms of I don't think it could be as hard as Jeopardy and the pressure. When you were watching yourself on national TV, you had to wear like a jacket and a fancy shirt. Like now, podcasters are a little bit less formal, so the whole experience must have been quite amazing to see yourself, I guess, we're taping now, so last night.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we filmed, just to go behind the curtain a little bit, we filmed 3 weeks ago. Like usually there's a bit of a delay between filming and broadcast. Although 3 weeks, I think, is pretty much as short as it could be in terms of how long it takes to get the show on the air. So, I had been there. I'd obviously participated, but I hadn't actually seen the show at all before last night. So it was really exciting to do that. I had a small watch party with some friends and family. At a local bar, so being able to share that with everyone was really great. There's a sort of swearing to secrecy, and I think everybody who's involved in Jeopardy cares a lot about Jeopardy and cares about keeping the secrets and things like that. So it was being held pretty close to my chest to what the outcome was, and really exciting to be able to to win, obviously, and share that with everyone was a great time.
Let's go back to this watch party. When you were there, did people at the watch party do like we did? My husband and I were shouting out the answers and playing along with you last night and, supporting.
We were doing it a little bit whenever there were a few questions that none of us got. And I would tell everyone, hey, none of us got this. Does anyone have it? And there were a few times where people were able to supply the answer, which was good. People were cheering when I got the answers correctly, which was nice. There was a lot of excitement after the end, obviously.
Well, I mean, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, didn't allow the drinking hours to be earlier for your national television debut compared to Sunday's, Canadian-U.S. finals in the Olympics where there was packed bars. But
that was tough. I mean, look, if you need me to be a venue for Canadian pride now that the Olympics are over, feel free to root me on, fellow Canadians. I'm happy to have your devotion.
Well, I mean, you were the Canadian
I don't think it's as fervent as hockey as hockey fandom. But sure, I can be the Canadian representative. I believe my opponents are all Americans.
You got a lot of the Canadian answers. They had no clue. So I was very excited. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's go back a bit in time to explain to us, why did you want to be on Jeopardy and how did it happen?
Sure. Well, this was in my anecdote yesterday, so I think it's fair to repeat here. which is that I was the 4-time champion of Camp Walden Staff Jeopardy, which was a real feather in my cap as a staff member at camp. I was a canoe tripper at Walden for a while. My older brother was also a 3-time champion there, so there was some family tradition there, and I think that probably speaks to trivia knowledge being something that was valued among our family as something to talk about. I think going even further back, honestly, when I was a kid, my mom loved Wheel of Fortune. She would always make sure to watch Wheel of Fortune around at 7:00. Jeopardy, of course, is on right after. So I think it was just natural that it was on. It was the thing that was on at 7:30. So I did watch it a fair amount as a kid and through university and until today. I applied and tried out in 2011. I know because it was my last year of university. Didn't get called after that. Same process as is now, where it's sort of like, they meet you and they can decide if they want to call you or not. I can't remember if I must have written a test again at some point afterwards, but around COVID time, I think they changed it to be the anytime test system that they have now, which is that you can write a test whenever. So for any aspiring contestants out there, if you watch Jeopardy and feel like you know the clues, if you feel like you do pretty well on that, take the test. It's good to get in the process, and you never know, you can make it to the big show. I never thought I would. I sort of had this feeling of wanting to do it, but the chances are pretty low. Hoping that I would do well if I got there, obviously, but being given the opportunity was just fantastic. It was a fantastic thing to happen.
They paid for your whole way down. Everyone went with you too, or just you? How did that work?
So as Menschwarmers listeners will know, I have 3 young children. So it was a little difficult to get everyone down there. It was just me. They do not pay for contestants to appear, but runners-up win $2,000 or $3,000. So the cost of the trip would be essentially covered for yourself at least. So unfortunately, wasn't able to have any family or friends in the audience. But I think that probably helped a little bit with the nerves, because I honestly, I was incredibly nervous.
You look nervous. I have to say, you look nervous.
Watching it last night, that was the thing that was most readily apparent to me, was like I could see myself swaying back and forth.
Well, you could say you were dovening, right? It was not back and forth. It was.
I will also say that this is also would not be readily apparent. I was wearing incredibly uncomfortable shoes, and I had spent some time the day before. I don't know why. I it was my first time in Los Angeles. The only thing I know about the city is you can't walk anywhere. Despite that, I decided to walk from Culver City up to Santa Monica in poor shoes. My feet were killing me. I had blisters. The day of the taping, I had these same shoes on that were killing my feet. You're standing for long stretches, but I just went into a flow state at some point and forgot about it. But that night, all I remember is taking my shoes off and feeling a sense of relief. Finally, I was just so uncomfortable. So I should have brought something more comfortable. I should have had some good luck charms, or at least some lucky shoes. That would have helped me.
Okay, so they talked about you're a lawyer from Toronto, Canada, but you never dropped the name Menschwarmers or your podcast.
I think by the time this airs, the anecdote will already be out, but I believe my anecdote tonight for my returning game will reference Menschwarmers. So hopefully that is a little Easter egg for our listeners and people who know the show, or maybe expands the audience a little bit to people who watch Jeopardy as well. But yeah, that's an interesting point. There's a whole questionnaire they have you ask you to fill out about anecdotes. You give information about different things, and they sort of run through with you what they want to talk about or what they think might be interesting, and it's sort of up to them what anecdote they want to talk about. Everyone who goes on Jeopardy, their anecdote after going on Jeopardy is, I was on Jeopardy. Whatever we did before is probably less interesting than the fact that we got to go on Jeopardy.
Well, this is a bucket list, so I want to know how much prep you did for the game show, and where did you practice?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I would say the number one form of practicing was watching the show. The show has a certain rhythm. The questions have a certain rhythm. There's usually information in the clue that can give you the answer, and just sort of getting comfortable with the questions, I think, is an important thing. Beyond that, there's been a lot of different strategies that people have talked about. A lot of people are into flashcards. Some people, I know James Holzhauer is big on children's books, which I have done. I've read my children things. A kid's book about Greek mythology covers enough ground that you might be able to answer some Jeopardy questions.
Well, you had one. Can we just, spoiler alert, you had Goodnight Moon. I knew that one too. So
Yeah, so there's a category on children's literature, and I definitely knew the Goodnight Moon one. There was a question on Amelia Bedelia. I didn't ring it. I tried to ring in on, but didn't get in time.
Fancy
that I knew the
Nancy,
answer
of
to.
course. Yeah. Also.
Ironic, because I hate the Amelia Bedelia books and refuse to read them to my children. But aside from that, I would say a lot of Wikipedia reading, to be honest. But yeah, watching the old episodes and following online with the questions was helpful, because one of the things I would do is, if I didn't know the answer to something, I would just go to the Wikipedia page for that thing, and it's like, well, here's something I don't know about. They're not going to ask this specific question again, but they might ask about some other Verdi opera or something like that. So I ought to know. I ought to know, have some sense of what those are.
What was the categories that you were most nervous about?
I thought that science would be my most difficult ones. There was a category about astronomy.
A great many of the stars in the Milky Way are this type, referring to a pair rotating around each other. James.
What is binary?
You are correct. Look at these scores. A great game. James is in the lead as we head into Final Jeopardy. Let's see what...
I don't have a science background, and my education on that stopped in grade 10 or 11, really. So I think that was hard. There was, I would say, I know Broadway fairly well, but there was a category on Broadway theaters that I honestly, I got one on Ethel Barrymore.
Right over my head.
That I where I know Ethel Barrymore's name from, that she was the matriarch of that family. I can't tell you. Sometimes there's things just come to you. It's interesting to see watching the show that it's I can tell, in retrospect, that it's probably half the questions I tried to buzz in on at the same time and somebody else was quicker, and half of them I didn't know the answer to. Somebody else got it, and it wasn't because I knew it just as well. The questions are tough, and it's easy to be stumped on them in the moment, even if watching at home or in retrospect you see this and say, well, obviously the answer is this. When you're up there and you're under the lights a little frazzled, it's much trickier to come up with the answer.
Well, okay, but you did have a couple of aces in the hole. First of all, your Jewish background helped you on a question, which I was so excited I was shouting out. What was the lost 10 tribes? And you said?
The 10 lost tribes of this nation are so called because they disappeared from history following an Assyrian invasion. James.
What is Israel?
Yes.
I said of Israel. Yeah, that was nice to say. I definitely think that, some Jewish education probably helped with that. But I think everyone comes to the show bringing their knowledge. There was one person who was one of the contestant pool that we were in is a Methodist preacher, and I would say her knowledge of the New Testament is probably much more significant than mine is, and my knowledge of the New Testament is unfortunately limited, and unfortunately, or not, maybe unfortunate or fortunate, that is a category that does come up every now and then on Jeopardy. There are questions about the Bible, and mine stops with the Song of Songs. So beyond that, I'm kind of useless.
Okay, but you're not useless in sports. You aced the question was, which country where their soccer players go by a single name? So you said, obviously,
Brazil. That was right.
All right. And then I even knew this one. There was a category about gum. What field is named for a chewing gum magnate? Do you remember?
Yeah, that was Wrigley Field.
Right.
That was exciting. So that was great because I got the first daily double. I think it was the fourth question or fifth question that I've been answering. I had gotten a few right. So it gave me the opportunity to go for a true daily double, which was one of my goals, I would say, going down to tape, that I want to say those words. And it was fun to be able to do it, even if the risk was only, relatively small in the first round.
8,000.
All right, for 8,000 more. You won't be in first, but you'll be knocking on the door. Here is your clue in world cities. Like his famous grandfather, portrait artist Lucien Freud died at home in this city.
What is London?
Yes, Sigmund and Lucien both died in London. $600 game at the moment. James, select.
World cities for 2,000.
In Richard Nixon's 6 Crises, number 4 is when his car is attacked in this South American city, where 61 years later, the U.S. closed its embassy. James.
What is Caracas?
Correct for the lead.
Okay, so lastly, before we talk about some of the ending things of the episode when you were losing and we were all like, oh no, you did have a question that married your Canadianness and your sports knowledge, which was what city do the Habs play? Duh. And none of them knew that.
Yeah, that again, saying no one else knew it is not necessarily fair, because I think everybody else was buzzing in on those ones. The world cities, something that everyone studies. Geography is pretty common Jeopardy question, so people know about that. But I did buzz in and say Montreal. As a proud McGill grad, I guess it would have been shameful to not know that one. And that led to the daily double that I was able to make a big wager on and sort of come back and allow me to take the lead. Honestly, watching last night, I didn't remember how far behind I was.
How did you deal with this? Like, you were behind, and then had this. What strategy did you use to come like the tortoise and the hare? There you were.
You know what? It's pretty typical these days for everyone to jump around the board trying to hunt the daily doubles. I think there's a realization that it's a real advantage to get them. You're more than likely to answer them, and if you bet big, it can be the chance to win, and that's what happened for me. The two people I played against, Trey and Krista, were excellent players. You do a little practice ahead of time, and so you get to see people how they do in practice. Doing some practice questions. That Trey was a 2-time champion by the time we played. Krista was excellent in practice. I think collectively we got 3 or 4 questions wrong during the whole round. And ultimately it came down to luck. Like I'm completely aware of that. I got lucky getting a few and then getting the daily double. That completely changed things. And if it wasn't for that, there's no way I would have won.
Okay, what was it like to interact with Ken Jennings? I mean, you said before the taping it's like off limits, but he's an idol of many people. What was it like when you talked to him?
Very nice, genial guy. I think the vibe from him is that like he cares immensely about Jeopardy, about the show. It's a huge part of his legacy, and obviously now as the host, that's his job. But yeah, the interaction is basically limited to the few moments of the anecdote, and then after the show, there's a brief roundup of how everyone did on the buzzer. And I believe that's published on Substack. So if you go on Jeopardy Substack, you should be able to see the post game interview where I do a little kvelling, I would say, after winning. So check that out as well. But other than that, he just seems like a really sweet guy. He seems very 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 intent on making Jeopardy as good a product as possible.
Well, you mentioned earlier Camp Walden that you were 4-time champions. On the show last night on Tuesday night, you mentioned that you actually won some cash each time. It's not chump change for a high school student. What did you do with your winnings at Camp Walden, and what are you going to do with the winnings from the real Jeopardy?
So
if I can be so gauche.
Yes. So the $250 I won in staff tournaments, usually I would buy some beer for the staff party after the summer when we were back home. I definitely remember doing that a few times, or taking friends out for lunch or something like that. And with my winnings on Jeopardy now, unfortunately or fortunately, it came to a person who is a complete spendthrift and unable to spend any discretionary money that I have, even if I want to. There's nothing I desire. So honestly, I'm going to be paying down my mortgage and investing and things like that. So I wish I had something more interesting to say. Maybe it'll fund a trip for me and my kids somewhere. But honestly, it's going to be put to the most boring purposes I can think of.
Okay, finally, what happens next? Is it in your heart of hearts to get called back for the Tournament of Champions or maybe Jeopardy Masters? Is that a possibility?
They do a fair amount of what they now call postseason play in Jeopardy. I think when I was a kid watching, it was only the Tournament of Champions. And before the elimination of the 5-game cap, it was just people who had won 5 games. It was, whenever they had enough 5-game champions, they would have a tournament. And now that's sort of changed because the cap is removed. You have guys who are winning, 11, 20 games. Toronto's Mateo Roche won 20 plus games. And the Tournament of Champions, I think, is just on a yearly basis. So there is an expansion based on the last Tournament of Champions to include more people. And they do an additional championship wild card for people who didn't win enough to qualify for the Tournament of Champions. They have some spots available and have those people in a tournament. So I can't say anything about whether I would be qualified for either of those. But obviously, it was lovely doing Jeopardy, and I would welcome the opportunity to do more in the future.
Well, now you have like 500,000 almost, because there are other Canadians from Jewish faith who've appeared on Jeopardy before you. Do you know any of them? Jordan Nussbaum from Thornhill, Dr. Evelyn Rubin, also 2018, she won 50,000, and a teacher from Heschel School, Aidan Orzak, also became a Jeopardy champion, a grade 8 teacher. Those are the ones we wrote about at the CJN. Don't know if you know any of them.
I don't personally. I mean, I've seen the names. I've seen the names in the episodes, and I've done some looking for past Toronto competitors. Honestly, I know like very vaguely a few people who have done Jeopardy before, but I don't really know anyone personally that much. So aside from the people I played with, who we've been able to stay in communication the last few weeks, and given that we're the only people who know have known the results up until now, it's been nice to have a group that can commiserate or talk together about what's going on. But other than that, it's been nice hearing from people. Plenty of people have reached out that I know professionally or casually or from my past, whatever, to congratulate me. So it's been lovely to hear from people.
You were in the Alex Trebek studio. Is that what that's called when you tape?
The Alex Trebek stage, I believe. Stage.
When you saw that, like, what was your impression of actually the studio itself from watching it on TV to actually being there?
It feels larger than life. It's a TV production, so the board is big, the screen is big. There's an audience that is watching you. There's a camera on a crane. This isn't something I'm really acquainted with. My limited role in sports media is mostly as a spectator. So it's an amazing production. They do an amazing job. Really just incredibly professional, everyone who's there. So it was a wonderful experience. I mean, there's nothing I can say that's more in praise than that. It was a wonderful experience. I was so lucky to have been called, and to be able to be part of it was just such a thrill. Really, a thrill of a lifetime again. Okay. Something I always wanted to do. Okay,
so you get the money like a few months later, but did they give you like a mug at least, or something to take home?
I have a hat. I wore it. I wore it last night to the watch party. I think I will never wear it again, unfortunately, because wearing it again, the only reason to wear it again is that so somebody asks me, "Were you on Jeopardy?" And that just seems like a little too braggadocious, I guess, for me to be doing it on a daily basis. So at least for the few years, I'm not planning on wearing the hat again outside the house. But I got a hat and a tote bag and a free year subscription to the Jeopardy Substack.
And the check is in the mail.
The check will be in the mail in a few months.
Thank you so much for sharing this wonderful experience. We wish you the best for the next couple of nights. And I guess we'll have to stay tuned. Thanks a lot for sharing this. It's been great.
Thanks, Alan.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounded like for this episode of North Star, made possible thanks to the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. Our show is produced by Zachary Judah Kaufman. The executive producer is Michael Freeman. And our editorial director is Alicia Richler, with the music composed by Brett Higgins. Do you watch Jeopardy? What's your favorite category? Let us know all your Jeopardy thoughts. We're at info@thecjn.ca. Please share this episode with people who might like it. That's the best way for Apple and Spotify's algorithms to boost our show and reach a wider audience. As always, thanks for listening.